I'm Shane White, and this is The Process. Hey gang, Shane White here with another edition of The Process. I'm doing a new feature called Artist Profiles. It's essentially interviews with artists that I know or have met who are willing to sit down with me and describe their process, the way they work, how they organize their reference, store their media, and what mediums they use and how they use them. And now, the interview, part 2. Tom KIDD with Abe Echeverria.
It's like I buy the paper, and it's just the paper I want, and then just make whatever. Thanks.
It's gestural stuff.
Are these very fast lines for you? Are they? Yeah. Can you draw a line like that slowly?
No, this will be a fast line.
Okay.
But yeah, this is all pretty fast. Just busting through.
One of the things I was doing, the stuff I was inking recently, is slowing my hand down and seeing what happens. But I have a tendency to move very quick when I draw.
Oh, sure.
But with ink, I decided to slow down and see what happens. Yeah, these are great.
When I have a brush, it's a lot easier to slow down and pull those long lines. With pen, it just depends.
Listen,
Peter DeSev has a book, and he had it published, a sketchbook.
Oh, really?
You ever see it?
No.
Peter DeSev's book?
No,
His little sketchbook?
I might have seen it, yeah.
But all it was a sketchbook, and somebody wanted to just produce it,
I just there's a thing online you can do print on demand, and I've put together a sketchbook that I'm hoping to sell on my website.
Yeah.
But the printing isn't as good.
Right.
If they only take 300 DPI images,
Yeah.
then you need about 600 DPI for ink work.
the one reason to give you to be on Facebook is to see what John Pirard is doing. It's some wild stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's really beautiful stuff.
Good.
One thing he did, which doesn't seem like much, he got out his old high school yearbook and did ink portraits of the people from high school.
That's a great idea.
And they're hysterical.
Yeah.
He had fun. He had hair at the time, early 70s. He really had a lot of fun doing it. You can tell by looking at it.
See, John has that eccentricity of an artist.
Yeah, he does.
Right.
He does.
Have you met John? No, you haven't met
No.
John. John Pirard?
No.
Yeah, you'd only not know. That's the thing. You should see what he's doing. You should see what he's doing. It's very, very edgy stuff, and he doesn't mind insulting people. He doesn't mind too much hurting people's feelings.
Do you have somebody that reps you in your storyboarding?
No, it's usually word of mouth because Seattle's such a large.
Why are you drawing in the middle? Where are we starting?
Because why I start at the beginning and watch a sketchbook grow. Like I still think I get better as I age. And if you start in the beginning, the good stuff's at the back, and by the time you get to the back, people don't want to go that far.
Right.
So I jump around a lot.
Horses I've drawn over and over and over again. I still don't. I don't have a facility for horses.
I try to draw them as often as I can.
Now, the museum, the science fiction museum, is up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he was like needing, but he's just like.
I'd love for them to get a show of contemporary illustrators up there.
I better eat.
But I'd have to go in.
Oh, I was in there for a little while. One of my paintings was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was in the H.G. Wells exhibit.
Oh, interesting.
It was one of the illustrations I did for the book. And it was actually, I didn't know it was there. It was actually one of Andrea's brothers lived there. And he was in the museum. He said, hey, there's one of Tom's paintings here.
Wow.
That's Tom Allen's place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paul Allen?
Paul Allen, sorry. Paul Allen. Well, Michael Whalen was on their board for a while there.
Right. This painting they borrowed from the Franks, Howard and Jane Frank. Something they bought from me. They told me that the guy at the museum didn't want to give it back to him. He wanted to just keep it. But I guess he didn't want to pay for it because they had it back then.
Do they do all right over there? Are they doing all right? Do they get a good crowd going through? And
It depends on the exhibit.
Yeah.
You know, they keep trying to bring in new items all the time, whether it's Star Wars based, which is usually a bigger hit. But yeah, it's interesting because there's a community of artists there as well. A lot of younger guys, in the sense of, like Todd Lockwood and Brom, and a lot of Magic the Gathering, art crowd. People who work for Wizards of the Coast.
right.
So, and I've kind of been in that circle for a while, and just realized that there's still a lot of illustrators, but the market's shrinking so much that it's like,
Yeah.
I think people are forgetting who's who these days, and I'm just trying to, I don't know. I've always had a love for illustrators, and illustration going back to the earlier days of it.
Right.
And Walt Reed did a great job at documenting a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's as much of that focus on current illustrators, because it seems like everybody's an illustrator now. They have digital tools at their hands. So, what do you guys think about that? About how the digital tools have kind of been introduced and changed the look and feel of it? Is it just another tool? Does it
I don't know.
change the relevance of the work you guys do? Or
Well, for me, I don't like it, but go ahead. I know Tom works with it fairly well.
Just have a couple of thoughts. What I often feel like is an episode of The Twilight Zone. Trying to remember the name of it. I think that there's a movie based partly on it called Real Steel. The old Twilight Zone episode where it's a boxing robot.
oh yeah, Hugh Jackman's in the latest film adaptation.
Except in this case, a human goes up against his robot malfunctions, and the human goes up against an actual robot fighter in this episode of Twilight Zone, and I'm the human. So that's kind of my recurring feeling when I see everything that's being done, everything that's going on. I feel like I'm a bit removed, using somewhat old-fashioned material for the most part. And when I have worked digitally, it's really just 2D, and I haven't really entered any sort of 3D aspect of it. But I love the traditional methods. I love having an original. A world where you can't walk into a museum and see an original painting. It's not one I would like. So I want to continue working traditionally, but I would also like to learn some new things and do some new things. Maybe mainly create some 3D sort of imagery. Any kind of new medium forces me to think more about what I'm doing, and I learn or relearn how I work, as I forget, because most of the time it's just instinct. It's just I start painting and eventually a picture comes out of it. And even when I have a painting that looks like a mess, I go, I know I can make it into something. It'll be something.
Right.
But when I work with a computer, like, why is this terrible? Why is this not working? What am I doing subconsciously when I paint that I'm not doing consciously now? I can't bring out of my conscience, and it helps my painting to do it. But but also the physical aspect of it is I work standing there at the monitor. I have that iPad I've drawn with a little bit. I played with it. It's not very comfortable at all. I'm not good sitting down and working. I don't like that. I'd rather stand up. And I don't know if you noticed in my studio, everything is at standing height. And so if I am at that main monitor there and working, I get tired very quickly. I get stiff. But when I'm painting with oil paint, I'm moving all around, even when I'm doing a little painting.
Right.
And so physically, it feels better doing it. So I kind of feel like what I need is a giant Cintiq, say 8.5 feet by 20 feet, just big enough to fit into my new studio, and then I can work with big strokes and everything else, and then I'll be happy. But also I showed you a little bit of that 3D stuff that Craig Farley did,
Right.
of my airship, and I'd love to create something like that, but the learning curve it's going to take me a while, and I'm still trying to earn a living, and the time invested in that is taken away from me earning a living. So maybe at some point maybe there's a faster way I can learn it than just teaching myself, which is how I do most things. And I'm good at teaching myself things. I'm not good at learning from other people as well. If someone tries to teach me something, I don't always catch on. People have a different way of doing things, a different way of perceiving things. Again, going back to my friend Craig Farley, is like a lot of the stuff I do with the computer, a lot of the stuff I know, I call up Craig, I say, Craig, how do I do this? And he's great because he knows exactly what to tell me. He says, Tom, here's the big concept you need to know. Here's the main thing you need to know when you do this. Well, now that I know that, I can extrapolate from that. And either people are too precise explaining things to me, or they're too general and not getting to the main thrust of it. Craig's great. He'll just say, he knows what I need to know. But I love learning, and that's, why I would like to do it. But,
Yeah.
This argument won't exist eventually because a lot of these young kids coming up are weaned on this stuff during this in education. They get it. They're not going to a traditional way of doing things. They're doing everything digitally. So they'll look at you blankly as if, you say NC Wyatt, hey, who's that?
Yeah.
And they've been all over the place on Facebook and Twitter and all this sort of stuff that they've been exposing themselves, all this time because they have the digital energy, So I can see myself, well, not myself any longer because I retired from education, but kids coming in where forget the traditional, just let it go, and just make sure that they have the wherewithal, the instruments to continue with their digital progress.
Right. Because everything builds off the same fundamentals.
Right. I mean, you can argue the value of traditional, but there is an energy that goes along with that they have to impart, and they don't know what that impart is. Research, think about an idea, to them it's just Google it, download it, get a little piece of this, a little piece of that, whatever, and then you have the generational, the ones that are gapped with it. They're making the transition, so they'll still have a Wacom. They'll try and draw on the Wacom and stuff like that. They'll try to adapt from their traditional and introduce their traditional into the digital.
Right.
But that eventually will be phased because that group will be aged, and stuff, and the younger groups coming in just don't don't deal with it.
What are you working? Evidently you work in a wide variety of mediums. What are some of the more difficult things you find yourself using or doing?
Well, to be honest, I think I'm of the generation that's kind of half and half. I respect the old illustration methods. A lot of the know a lot about the illustrators from those time periods. But when it comes to getting right down to do that kind of stuff, it's I think the problems I'm having is trying to get the stuff that's in my head down on paper or canvas or the substrate in the way that I see it. But because I work in a lot of different methods and a lot of different mediums, I tend to feel like this should feel like a 70s illustration. So I'll start trying to illustrate it in that way. Or something out of the 30s, I'll try to illustrate it in a pulpy kind of way. I'll be, okay, this is going to be thicker paint. And I'm wondering, it's like, well, maybe I'm utilizing that information a little too literally, as opposed to having my own style. But to me, it's like, if you're going to do that kind of work, and you have all these resources at your fingertips, then why not, filter them through your own vision and experience what maybe they were experiencing, those artists from the earlier periods. So I think it's for me, it's always been hard for me to just pick one style and say, this is who I am. And I don't know if a lot of artists have that problem. They lean on their abilities and their way of looking at the world as their style, and that's it. They choose that.
I knew the artist I studied with, Morton Roberts, was exactly what you're doing. You approach each assignment and see what that assignment is calling for. So your personal identity is not injected into that assignment. You do what's appropriate for that assignment. The period, that kind of thing, which might throw you into a different style kind of thing. And that's the way this guy, my mentor, went to things.
What was his name again?
Morton Roberts. He did a lot of stuff for Life magazine.
Okay. The name sounds familiar.
If you look up Life, he did things on Rigoletto. He did things on the Russian Revolution. Okay. He did the Jazz Age, which was one of the tableaus that were just tremendous. But each approach was, you see it in the work. He would do the change-ups,
Respond to it.
Yeah. As opposed to a Bob Peak. Mark English.
Yeah. Immediately
You
when you say
immediately
it,
know, oh, this is the Mark English.
and art directors rely on that, and that's why
Very much, yeah.
As an illustrator, I've had no real success in that because I don't have something that's recall based.
Mm-hmm.
But and I love so many types of art, not just illustration, not just storyboards. I do comic books as well. But I think for me, I don't know about you guys, but like when I grab a tool, whether it's a big pen or a paintbrush or oils or acrylics, I draw and paint differently. I respond to the medium in I believe a unique way, and so it's a little bit unpredictable.
Well, the thing that kind of surprised me is looking at work done by traditional artists who worked traditionally for years, and then they did digital paintings, and you could very easily see it was the same artist. The work looked the same to me. And it's surprising how much of the personality remains in their work when they use a completely different medium. And I've always felt like I feel like my work actually has no personality, that I don't have, that there's nothing to it that says it's me. That's the way it just, I
honestly, like when you put your paintings or you see your paintings next to somebody else, you don't see your own voice?
I don't see, no.
Don't see a difference?
I don't see it. I see choices of subject matter. I might choose different subject matter than they would, but I don't see my particular voice per se, except when is that when when someone contacts me and says they want a particular thing from me, like one of the things I get from time to time is someone says, we'd like you to do a cover, but we'd like it to be Nemo. And then then I kind of get there'll be a certain feel to it, you know. But other than that, I'm doing, you know, I should show you some of the historical alternate world pieces I've done. I did a whole series. I'm still doing it.
Oh, that'd be neat.
And that's has evolved because it's unusual because I usually read the books, and in this case, the books weren't necessarily written. So the author, great guy, Eric Flint. I talked to him on the phone. He described something to me. He will send me historical reference, which I can augment, of course, with more research. And then I produce these very non-iconic scenes from the book. I try to put something anachronistic in it, and he says, I know you like to put something anachronistic in it, so this is a scene, you know. And it's like, well, it's supposed to read as science fiction, otherwise it's just an historical painting.
Right.
So you know, like there's a scene of an uptime museum. Well, you have to understand the terminology. An uptimer is somebody from the future who's been transplanted back in the 17th century, and a downtimer is somebody who was, you know, of that century. And but then they'll carefully write, and they like it to be somewhat accurate to the book. They'll write that all the uptimers dressed as downtimers, and nobody carried around any unusual 20th century technology. Thanks. I mean, I'd like to say something about the fact that there's this, you know, merging of philosophy and time and everything else. And, to me, it's odd is that I even got that series. But then they decided I would be pretty much the official artist for it, and I would just do them all. And I know half dozen artists who really know their history, and they know it in a visual way. It's not just, you know, dates, names and such. And I get stuck sometimes, and I feel bad about this. I feel like I'm cheating. I call them up and I go, what do I, like Courtney, for example. Courtney, what do I do here? What do these shoes look like? I can't find any idea what the shoes look like in that period. And he can, it's just off the top of his head, he can tell me. Nice. He can describe it to me. Like, Courtney, you really should be doing this series. Courtney Skinner. I showed you some of his drawings. But it's kind of like this, you know, in school where they said you should probably learn all this so you don't have to look it all up all the time. Every one of these covers, I'll spend hours reading the history of the time and looking at books that have old art in it and old drawings and everything else. Try to get a sense of what's right for it, and I know every single one of them, the historian's going to look at it and go, oh, look, that belt buckle, that's wrong, you know. But
does that bother you? I mean, ultimately,
it doesn't really bother me because I like the learning part of it, because they're very difficult for me to do. I like learning, and my attempt is to try to get things right, but I know that ultimately I won't. I know that I'll make a mistake here or there. And also, you really actually have to make some guesses, you know.
Sure.
I'll know what the royalty wears, I know what the upper class wears, but I may not know exactly what you know, a peasant. Well, I'll know what a peasant wears. I may not know what a more middle class, I guess, wear. So I might could guess. 99% is right. Yeah, what they wear.
For example, if you get a guy like Al Hirschfeld, who at the very end of his career, you know, he did try to make the shift to digital.
Oh, really?
And he was actually rendering in digital before he passed away. You know, so then you get the opposite spectrum where you got a guy like Bob McGinnis, for example, who still paid the way in his studio, and that's it. He doesn't want to know about anything else. You know.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a computer, I don't think.
And probably doesn't have a computer or anything, you know. Just hasn't bought into any of it, you know, and just sticks with what he does, you know. And then you get, on the other side,
Yes, please.
you get the dinosaurs who vested their money in Westport property when the time was in the 50s or 40s, you know, when you can do it. Turned that over, a couple of $1 million or whatever, and just retired out of it, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Just to leave the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, just left the whole thing, not even bother with it, you know.
Well, a lot of the guys who lived in Westport, they went into Western art.
Yeah, a lot of it.
Sure. Tom Lavelle.
Right. They just said,
That's right.
well, this is the way I see it. They've done beautiful painting, they've done great work. Obama. Was it Frank McCarthy? Another one of the guys, another Westport guy, I think. Anyway, I think they did some Western art. Saw that, wow, this sure beats illustration. The Mill, did you ever hear of them?
Depends on what you mean.
Okay, it's
Publishing company?
It's a company. They
Film?
film, yeah,
heard
film.
of that.
I think they won an Academy Award, but now they're in mostly video games and commercials. Well, they contacted me, and they wanted me to do with what they called matte paintings, but really background paintings.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I've never done that before. I got to sound like I know what I'm talking about. So I called up David Mattingly, who wrote a book on matte painting.
Oh, great.
And I was embarrassed to tell him I didn't have his book, but I promptly ordered it. Actually, he probably would have given me one. He had an opening for it at his place. I just had to go down to Hoboken.
But he's up in Cape Cod, isn't he? Somewhere up there?
No, that's Barclay.
Oh, that's Barclay.
David's in Hoboken, New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
So he said, Tom, you need to know this. And he said, this, and this. You need to know this. And I said, okay. So I talked to them, and I sounded like I knew what I was doing. And I did 2 matte paintings for them.
Oh, nice.
And but they balked at the amount of money I wanted for it.
They balked.
Yeah. And I was like, I thought you guys paid well.
What was the size of the painting?
Oh, the resolution or the size?
Your size, the time you would put into painting it, like
It was about a week of time to do the 2. And
But size-wise, they don't want to be very big anyway, do they?
Well, I didn't do it. I actually, this is how I did them. Is I started off with oil paint, and I scanned them, and I finished them in a computer. That was the easiest way to do it. They complained that they were looking a little too realistic, but what they described to me was pretty finished-looking work. And they described a particular.
I mean, that's the idea of a matte painting, is that it's supposed to blend with another.
But it wasn't a real. But it actually wasn't real. It was a kind of a. They said it was the look of my. I can't remember the name of the movie. How to Train Your Dragon.
Okay.
But those backgrounds were pretty finished looking to me.
Nice.
They said
a
they
little
wanted that,
stylized,
just a little bit, just a little bit. So that's what I thought I would do.
Okay.
And they said no, we need it even more stylized. But they thought I was charging a lot.
What,
I was surprised.
do you care to share that price?
I can tell you. I told them I wanted $100 an hour.
Okay, that's what I charge for storyboards.
Okay, so then I wasn't ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, if you're working a 40-hour week, it's $4,000, and that's what film storyboard guys get.
Right.
And if you're doing production paintings, it's not a bad price.
Right.
As far as I
So,
know.
We can do the video.
right.
We don't have the black beans.
So-
We have
That's,
it's brown rice, pinto beans, and then
the guild, right?
guac, sour cream salsa.
The ones that do it for film.
I don't want that.
You're a guild artist?
No, because I do. I don't. I haven't been on a film in
I've done commercial work. I've done indie films, but
Indie films, you're
only
okay,
video
yeah.
games at this point.
But Paul is a guild artist. I mean, but Paul
And
is
he's got
in
his
the
card?
union, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's part of the storyboarders.
Yeah.
And then cheese, the guac, all that stuff is fine.
And he's,
Hard to get into. Hard to get to.
yeah, that's why he keeps it, even though he hasn't done it.
Right.
Paul.
Chadwick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I think he might even be Screenwriters Guild too.
Really.
Yeah, because he wrote a screenplay for Concrete,
Right.
and you just collect them.
Collect them all.
Yeah.
Directors
Yeah.
Guild.
Yeah. I among the games I worked on early on, I worked on a ride film with Rhythm and Hues,
Okay. I've
And-
interviewed there.
and that was a week, and then never again. It was like,
Yeah. It's a fickle industry. I
But-
mean, like, did you end up? You were able to negotiate the price out with them, even though they were like, "Oh,
they
you're
had no
expensive."
problems with what I asked for.
They
were-
not Rhythm
they
and Hues, but the mill, like. Usually,
Oh no, they agreed to it. They just
Okay.
thought it was a lot. Maybe they thought the two paintings should have taken less than a week. I don't know.
So each painting was a week.
No, both paintings I did in a week. So
That's fine. They're being funny.
I don't know. Do you know who Bob Camp is? Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
lives in Brookfield.
Oh, okay.
They described what they were looking for, and he said, "You should hire Tom Kidd." That's how I got the job.
Nice.
You got to talk to Klugerman, Barry Klugerman.
The name sounds
You
familiar.
put that on. That's all you have to do is just put that on, and he'll take care of the rest.
Sit back.
You'll have.
It'll be interesting. It will be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll be fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, is that the guy with the all the stories?
No. Actually, the
Can you tell him about Barry?
Ed Vabell, you can do that with too.
He's like that. Yeah.
That's but Barry even more so.
Barry is more.
Barry more so. Barry is a illustration historian and collector. He took in Roy Crinkle towards the end of his life because Roy didn't
Yeah.
have family to take care of him. He was sick with lung cancer,
And he has a wonderful collection of Heinrich Clay work.
yeah, he does.
Oh,
He
my.
does.
Yeah.
He does.
Oh,
And as far as art books go,
Oh yeah. Art books.
the most expensive, the most hard to find stuff, he's got them all.
I collect old art books as well.
If you ever make a trip into New York, next go around or whatever, I don't know what your situation is, but if you make a trip into New York, you must get a hold of Tom to get you in touch with Barry Kluger.
Yeah, I can do that for you.
You know.
Okay, that would be great.
And,
Yeah.
you'll have a blast listening to this guy.
Oh, he's going to pull out stuff to show you. You'll be amazed what he has. It's a magic house apartment he's got there.
Yeah.
Oh. A couple of years ago, I stayed with Michael Kaluta because I was coming to New York City and I wanted to spend a couple days down in the city, but I didn't realize the New York Marathon was that weekend and everything was booked. And he was part of the same group that we were in, and I said, "Hey, what's going on in New York?" He's like, "Oh, it's a marathon." I'm like, "Oh, great! I don't have a place to stay." He's like, "Well, stay with me." And his place is like it was an old 5-story walk-up, and he had like 2 or 3 rooms, and they were just filled with all kinds of stuff, like a museum of old books and little gigas and statues. I mean, it took 3 days before I saw this Pegasus horse that was sitting right in front of his drafting table because there was so much stuff. It was just overwhelming.
Nice. Yeah.
I saw the video of it online.
Yeah.
Pretty neat to see.
Oh yeah, yeah, I did entertain.
You know what I found the most entertaining? Not that it wasn't fantastic on its own, but only I would find it entertaining. Is slowly he pans across the room and there's my painting.
All this.
Right.
Yeah.
He hasn't hidden it behind anything yet. That's what I was happy about.
Well, he's moved since, so
Right now it could be in a closet.
I think he also had a Stephen, friend of his. What's his name? Stephen. Besides his name, Hickman. Yeah.
Okay.
I just run there.
I was gonna say it's very.
Steve's another good guy to talk to. Steve has 1,000 stories, and a lot of art to see. I mean, he's a fantastic painter.
He's always at those Lunacons and things like that.
Yeah. I see him at Lunacon. And Steve does find me a little frustrating. Is that our sense of humor doesn't always fit together well, we were at a restaurant. It was dark and it had halogen lights, and I was noticing the light in his eyes was really odd. And it seemed to be creating a pattern that human eyes shouldn't do. And I thought, well, maybe it's the lights. And I said, Andrew, go sit next to Steve for a minute. I was looking at her eyes. I was looking at his eye. Her eyes look fine. He says, okay, I know what you're talking about. And he's had the lenses in his eyes replaced. It was a congenital deal.
That's what my dad had.
And it's odd in certain light. It reflects the light in a very strange way.
Wow.
So he's got these bionic eyes. But the thing is like the way he said it, he's like, Tom, I know what you're talking about. I know what's going on here. But it's like I can't help but notice something odd. I need to know what's going on. I gotta figure out. I need to do a scientific test here. I need to see someone else's eyes next to his and see if maybe it's the lighting.
Do you think that need to know kind of informed your book, the whole layout or the whole approach to teaching?
I think that the one of you talking about the Other Worlds book that I did. Yeah. I was instructed with that book very strictly to not get into that. I was told not to, and they said this is what artists want. We know, we've done the research. They want a recipe.
No.
They want to have it written out step by step so they can do what you do. And I thought, well, that's not going to really do it. That's not enough. And so I put a disclaimer at the end of the book saying everything you just read, keep in mind, this is not a recipe. You can't do it as a recipe. You've got to understand the basics. So the key thing with this book is to study life, study nature, study everything, and that's what I put it into the book. The on Amazon, when you have a book come out, your friends go on Amazon and they write nice things about your book. That's standard procedure. But I had a few strangers come in and write nice things. One lady wrote, I looked through this book and I didn't buy it. Like, already, I'm like, you're writing a review and you didn't buy the book? And she said, because it looked more like everything was a recipe, and I wanted to know more about the artist's philosophy and thinking behind the paintings. And as soon as I start my blog back up again, I think I'll find that person, write her and say, okay, now my blog's back up again, buy the book, and then you can just read the blog to find out everything else.
That's right.
But yeah, I would have, all the books, the books I've done, I would have done differently if I would just been given the freedom to do it exactly the way I want to. And even when I did do it the way they wanted to, I kind of tried to sneak in as much as I could of my own kind of thinking. And I was actually, I was surprised, like, it was with Impact. They send you a book of rules they're supposed to follow. Really? And I read over them, and I saw the reasoning behind some of them, and I said, it makes sense. I'll do that, I'll do that. And then I just didn't look at it again. And then I did the book more or less the way I kind of would do it, but then in the back of my head, and they didn't like too much. So I regret following what I did follow.
Yeah.
You know, that maybe I should have just gone ahead and completely ignored it, because I noticed some artists did that. By the way, the first thing you do, if anyone asks you to do a book, first thing you do is say, I'd really like to see some examples of your books. And then you can get a half dozen books for free. That's my philosophy, is whatever I can get for free, that's what I'm going to try to get up front.
In case you don't get paid on the back end.
And this is where I feel guilty on this one, is Lucasfilm had a project where they have all these artists contribute to
the Star Wars universe. Yeah.
And I was supposed to be part of that. But that was during the time I was writing the 2 books, and I started it. I agreed I would do it. I never signed the contract. I just verbally agreed. I wanted to do it. I came up with an idea. I drew it. I did a color sketch for it. And then it just was crazy. I just knew that I can't kill myself. And besides, if I'm going to do something for that, I want it to be something spectacular. If at all possible, I'd like it to stand out.
Yeah.
And the deal was George Lucas would buy it if he liked it. But the other part of that is that you agreed that you could never sell it for less than you offered to him for it. So that was his way. Of course, how could they follow it up? I don't know.
Right.
But and how could they what would they do? Arrest you? I don't know.
Sue you.
Whatever. But before I started it, I said, I really love those movies, but the more background I have, I can look and read. And then the guy running the thing sent me 8 books.
Wow.
The art of, the movies and everything else. I'm already ahead on this. And then I never contributed to it, and I feel bad about that.
Doesn't matter, because they have all your books anyway. They'll get somebody to do it like you do.
Right? Yeah. Well, yeah. That could be. That could be.
Yeah, a lot of these guidelines are leads from a Step-by-Step magazine.
Yeah.
Which had the artists do the step-by-step thing. So a lot of these books that are published are kind of guided by that kind of format, like Sergio Martinez's step-by-step pages.
Oh yeah.
Those are quite good.
Yeah. There's a lesser-known artist. You should look him up.
Sergio Martinez.
Do you know his work?
No, but by sight, it might be one of those things where I know the art.
You probably would, but he's an exquisite draftsman.
Right.
Exquisite.
Right.
Self-taught.
Yep.
Really? Yep. Those kind of geniuses.
Yeah.
It's always frustrating.
And he did storyboards. He does storyboards on occasion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So he's still working and practicing as an artist?
Well, he's in Mexico at the moment. I mean, I don't know when you talked to him last, but it was,
As far as I know, he's in Mexico City again.
Yeah. We had him here. He was here with us for a while in town. He stayed at my place for a while, worked out of my studio and stuff like that while he was here.
So what are you going to do now that you're retired? Are you going to just do more art, or do you have a bigger plan?
I'll do some personal work, and I'll do. I'm doing this collecting thing that I mentioned before. I go online, I go to the auction sites, and I try to collect, bid and collect as much art as I can, And the other thing I might do is kind of an online, not eBay, but you're able to buy off my site, basically.
Sure.
If it's unusual, if I find something unusual, for example, I'll offer it up there. Somebody, a collector that might like that piece in their collection, that type of thing. Yeah.
I've slowly started collecting other artists, and it's just because it is expensive, I got lucky with that one auction. They had like Arthur Ignatius Keller inks, from like the teens or something like that. And it was like my first piece. I'm like, I just want to get more, and it's kind of addictive,
Rick Yeager, Buck Rogers cartoon strip.
Yeah.
I purchased one online, right? I put it in for framing, and restoration, a little restoration, because there was some coffee stains on it that I wanted removed. They lost it.
And lost.
Well, I'm working with them presently until we really close this down. That it was really, really lost. But so far, they lost it. The retouchers, the restorers lost it. You know.
That's
But
here in town.
no, the restorers were in Long Island,
Oh, okay. Okay.
in Hempstead. And,
Okay. That's terrible.
this is through James.
Oh, okay. That's bad.
But that's one of the recent cartoon things I got. You know, which I thought was going to be kind of nice to have, but no, I don't have it.
Now, do you have a rider on your insurance to protect your art?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll do it.
Yeah.
Might be good. I mean, at least.
Yeah, you got it, because they'll give you a certain, maybe 25,000, you know, automatically, but you have to get a rider to boost it up to whatever else you've got, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did you guys start collecting art? I mean, from other friends and illustrators. I mean, is this something you've always done? Is it something that you found that you needed to do because it was important to self-educating? Or?
I'm not really that big a collector. I bought very little art. I have a Sergio Martinez.
Oh.
I bought one of his. Actually, Abe had a gallery for a little while, and I had a good year. You know, I think the good year. You're like, whoa, boy. If this happens every year, this will be great.
And you have some nice examples of artists. You have some nice examples from your artist friends, you know.
Yeah. I'd say half of what I have was given to me, and then the other half I bought. And a couple pieces I traded for, and that's about it. I know one. I actually have when he was still a teenager. I have a painting that Phil Hale did, and I have a painting that we briefly collaborated on that Rick Berry had, and that's unfinished though. That's just sitting in a drawer. And then the Ian McCaig may be I don't know, that might actually be worth something, you know.
Ian McCaig.
Yeah.
There's so little of it out there.
I actually have two. The other one's inside. One is in Canada. There's three. Is a book I have, an early book that he wrote and another author took credit for. Because he said that was how you get published. He did a nice little drawing inside it, and then he also inserted a drawing that's still inside the book that I kept inside there. That's so I've got those. But
like a remark?
Well, there's a remark as well as a separate sheet with a drawing on it. Your money's so good here.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
Do you know a guy named Fred Taraba? He used to work with the Illustration House.
Yep.
And now he's off on his own.
Yeah,
I just looked at his site recently.
Oh, he has a site.
Yeah, of all the stuff he has available, you can buy or consign with him. He's got his own thing going now. You know.
Yeah, I've seen some of those pieces. He writes a lot for Illustration.
That's
magazine.
right. He's got a number of books out there. He did one on Lion Decker.
Got that.
Yeah.
There was a Saul Tepper I had eye on. It was, I think, only $1,200. It was one of the vignettes that he did, and it was at the Illustration House. And I really wanted to buy that. And I said, oh boy, if things go right this next month, I'll come back and buy them. Didn't go that well. In fact, it was what screwed me up is the guy. This is crazy. There was a show at the Illustrator Society, and it was a Spectrum show. And this guy, everybody said, "Oh yeah, he's a millionaire." Blah blah blah. Came in, And they contacted me, said, "Oh, he's going to buy your painting." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, just do me a favor. Don't let him have the painting until he pays for it." I said, "Oh no, he's good. This guy's good." So I come by and I said, "Where's the painting?" And they said, "Oh yeah, he came and took it." I said, "Okay, well then, where's the check?" He didn't leave us any check.
Now,
And it turns out he was
who's
a
this?
charlatan.
Who's
Who was the
this?
guy who did this?
Yeah.
I don't remember his name now. I don't remember his name. But the illustration house, Terry, whatever his name is, said, "Oh, this guy's good. This guy's good." No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
This is to Illustration House.
No, not illustration. Illustrator Society. Society. Yeah. What was it? Right. Who was running it back then? Terry something.
Yeah, Terry Brown. Yeah.
Right. And he said everything's fine, and then it wasn't good.
Change. Be right back.
I had to strong arm everybody to get my painting. He wrote me 2 bad checks. This guy. After that, he sent me 2 bad checks.
Really?
That screwed me up.
Wow.
You know, it was like I'm going to take that money and do this and this with it, and then it wasn't there. It's like, I don't know about you, but it gets, even if I'm doing okay, and I get something disappointing like that happening, then all of a sudden I feel poor
But
again.
doesn't the check go to a Christmas fund or something for kids?
Not this
Wasn't the
show.
money-
Not
that
this
show?
show.
No?
Not this show. It went to me.
Oh.
It went to me.